Erik, many thanks for making time to speak to us. Do we get a sense that we're moving away from the sky back to the ground?
Well, we have been for a while now really diversifying away from pure aviation, because we've seen historically that most of the money is made by the service providers to aviation and not by the airlines themselves. So we've been diversifying in various directions. One of them has been the airport lounge concept. So we've obviously got the airport lounges running at all the main centres around the country, including the International Lounge at Johannesburg, and then also the Slow in the City Lounge in Sandton, which is just across the intersection from the Gautrain station. So location-wise, it's almost a Gautrain lounge as opposed to an airline lounge, but very much the same concept. And that's been doing exceptionally well for the past 5 years. So we've got a good feel for what customers are looking for in that space. And so the sort of natural progression from that was to move a little bit more into the restaurant space and have a meeting space that's very much around the food and the dining and a bigger experience than simply a workspace. And yeah, we've had a great launch for it. I think it's going to do very well. It's going to be quite novel and quite sophisticated, and it fits in very much with this new hub that's been developing around the Gautrain station in Sandton. So we're seeing a lot of big business developing here. We're seeing the Alexander Forbes, the Old Mutuals, etc., developing around that intersection. And we really wanted to create something that's got that very cosmopolitan, international, sophisticated feel, the kind of thing that you find in downtown New York or in downtown Singapore, etc. And something that's also got constant innovation. So it's not just the same old menu season after season. You want people to go there and find a new drink or a new experience or something new that they haven't eaten before. So it's going to be quite an exciting space.
It's quite interesting, Erik, because the mere fact that we have been seeing oil coming down, at least for the past 2-3 years, coming down, even got to $28 a barrel, one might have expected that the aviation space is actually making more money, given the fact that oil is relatively cheaper, at least in a layman's understanding. One might have thought that you might be, edging towards that particular direction more, maybe more flights, maybe more frequency, but you are going onto the other arm and diversifying on the other side. How do you draw the parallel here?
Well, the oil price on its own, it doesn't reflect the Rand fuel price. So as the oil price came down, the exchange rate deteriorated. So the Rand fuel price never came down that dramatically. And at this point in time, as we see the oil price escalating again with a high Rand, we are seeing that the Rand price of fuel is going to escalate again. So the aviation space, it might have had some relief overseas. In South Africa, it didn't get much relief from the oil price because of the exchange rate. But that's a completely separate business decision ultimately. So we've got a number of streams that we're working on. We're working on a big pilot training center that's been running for a while now already. We've obviously got our travel business, which goes outside of airlines, so that's car bookings and hotels, etc. We've got the lounges and the hospitality space, which is where the course restaurant fits in. And then we've got the food directions catering business, which obviously again also ties in with hospitality and the lounges. So, but those are all run with independent business decisions versus the airline. So they've all got to succeed on their own feet. The airline's got to succeed on its own feet. And yes, there might be some correlation from time around capex, but ultimately these businesses all have to succeed on their own. It's not a case of saying, well, the one is exceeding at the cost of the other.
Now, initially we did see a partnership with FNB, at least when this was being rolled out initially. Are we about to see another partnership, at least when you're edging into this particular direction, the Slow in the City?
Well, Slow in the City was part of the whole FNB partnership already, of the airport lounges. So at the moment, Slow in the City still has FNB as a partner in terms of access to sort of day-to-day access to the lounge. We do have open access for the use of the meeting facilities, etc. So that's available to anyone who wants to book for board meetings or just getaways. Or we often find that wanting to get out of the corporate office space to have something a little bit more creative environment, especially in marketing meetings and ad presentations and all these kind of things, investor presentations, etc. Slow in the City has been a great venue for that. But the F&B relationship is still very much there in the lounge space.
Now, of course, Comair is one of the airlines across the continent that are posting a positive bottom line. How essential is your survival reliant on diversification of your products?
At the moment, we're sitting with about 15 to 20% of our profits coming from the non-airline. So there's still a very big piece that is airline focused, 80% of the profits. But as we move ahead, we're really looking at moving towards sort of a 50-50. That's where we ultimately want to get to. Probably in the next 3 years or so, we'd like to see 50-50 airline, non-airline, just to really balance out the risk profiles across various elements of exchange rate, oil price, economic circumstances, etc. It'll create a more balanced impact of other factors across the business.
Erik, finally, Slow in the City, why now?
Why now?
Yeah.
Well, Slow in the City's been running now for about 5 years already, and we've started to see very specific trends around people utilizing it, and we see that there's big uptake of the meals being served in Slow in the City because it's a high quality facility. So we found people getting more and more interested in coming there for lunch meetings and late meetings, etc., for the food, and then to sit across the table for a meeting. And because of that impetus that was being created, we said, well, let's take this a step further. The timing is right. That area around the Gautrain station hub is developing at a hell of a rate right now, so it's just the timing is right to do something that's specific towards restaurant type meeting space.